Weather and life both change quickly. Do you have a farm estate plan? You need to learn the best option to help your family avoid or minimize federal estate taxes and other costs.
I'm Brad Swenson, President of Swenson Investments in Commodities. We work confidentially with farmers, ranchers, and advisors to help develop the best farm estate plan.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about the green bridge. What's the difference between a green bridge, a red bridge, a yellow bridge, a silver bridge?
Well, it makes a big difference because green in your fields means something is growing in the field. Now, when we're talking about a green bridge, we want a certain period of time, usually at least a couple of weeks, before we have any other crop growing in the field. We want to control everything that's out there. So we want the field to be a clean slate when we start next year's crop. Now, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say we're in a continuous wheat area and we planted wheat, we harvested that wheat, but we've got some volunteer wheat out there, and you know what? There was a little bit of disease in it. Now that disease is allowed to continue on through this volunteer wheat, and then we come back in this fall to plant some winter wheat. Well, that disease is already out in the field and it's full blown. We're going to have big time problems. Now, they saw the same thing down in South America with soybeans. In Brazil, you could pretty much raise crops year round. So what farmers were doing is raising that crop of soybeans. They'd harvest it in February or March. Well, then they weren't going to plant that next crop of soybeans until September, but you know, there's some volunteer soybeans that survived, some seed that dropped at harvest or whatever.
Well, beyond that, some of the
sprouted.
guys were planting soybeans. They were raising as many as 3 crops a year. They'd plant soybeans the day that they were harvesting. They were planting the next soybean crop in there, and it was just continuous where they had a crop followed by a crop, followed by a crop, followed by a crop. Now, you can do that, but again, you want to have everything dead for 1, preferably 2 weeks, so there's no green bridge. In other words, no green growth continuing on with the disease cycle, but also with insects too. Because if you have green growth out there, that means you've got another place that will harbor insects. And obviously, as farmers, we don't want to have to deal with any more insects or diseases than is absolutely necessary.
Well, green bridge is very important, like you say, for diseases, for insects. It's just important to start out fresh again when you're going to plant a crop. Otherwise, we talk about management for crop and how much that's going to cost farmers. I can't imagine what it would cost if you never had a break from crop. You know, we kind of cuss it sometimes here in the northern U.S. We say, oh man, those guys, they're so lucky. They get to raise crops all year round. We get to push snow all winter and work on equipment. Well, you know what? Having a crop all year round can be some big time problems. That's why we talk about this green bridge. Now, you may say, oh, I don't know, I'm in a certain area, I never have to worry about that. How about your garden area? Think about that, for example. Do you put your garden back in the same spot all the time? You know, this could be an issue for you. And for a lot of guys, they move that garden area around.
Yeah, but see, the whole difference, the whole difference with the garden is you're raising spring crops or summer crops, I should say. In winter wheat, it's a crop that's seeded in the fall. It's going to grow up in the fall. It's alive all winter long, whereas your garden, chances are, is dead from the 1st of October till the 1st of May, maybe. So you've eliminated the green bridge in most garden situations. But out in fields, especially where you're raising those winter crops like winter wheat, you've got to be very concerned about this green bridge. Again, we want to eliminate the green bridge for 1 week at minimum. 2 weeks would be our preference. We want to have absolutely nothing out there so we have fewer diseases and fewer insects.
One more thing, Brian. We aren't just talking about keeping volunteer of that crop out of there. We're also talking about the weeds. Don't forget, when we say keep everything green out of there, that's what we're talking about, because maybe you're raising wheat, but if you have some foxtails or some barnyard grass or some cheatgrass even out there, those other types of grasses can harbor the same insects and diseases. It's important to start with a clean slate.
Well, speaking of weeds, we've got a very difficult weed that is becoming Roundup resistant in some parts of the country. We'll talk about it later in the show.